They laughed at him for being old, but in seconds, silence fell because history had just walked into their gym. The black belts thought it would be funny to test the quiet old man who sat at the edge of the mat. "Hey, sir, want to show us a move?" one of them joked, drawing laughter from the group. His name was Thomas Hale, 62 years old, dressed in plain slacks and a worn jacket. Most thought he was just another retired worker killing time. But the way he rose from his chair, the stillness in his eyes carried a weight no one in that gym could recognize. What followed that night would leave them silent and change them forever. Just a quick little pause before I forget. If you like this kind of stories of overcoming adversity and justice, please leave a like and let us know in the comments where you're watching from. And if you're new here, consider subscribing to our channel so you don't miss tomorrow's special video. I guarantee you won't want to miss it. Now, let's jump back in. A man no one noticed was about to remind them all what silence can hold. The martial arts school in Cedar Falls was full that Saturday morning. Parents sat on folding chairs along the wall, watching their children train. At the far end of the mat, a group of young black belts had gathered, laughing between drills. Their voices carried. By the entrance, an older man leaned quietly against the wall. His name was Thomas Hale, 61 years old. Gray hair clothes cropped, his frame lean but not frail. He wore a plain flannel shirt tucked into faded jeans, boots scuffed from years of use. To most, he looked like any tired grandfather waiting for a ride home. "Hey, old-timer," one of the younger men called, grinning as he gestured. His name was Ryan Briggs, 23, black belt tied too tight, uniform crisp and spotless. "You here to sign up or just watching the kids?" His friends chuckled. Thomas didn't answer. He only gave a polite nod, folding his hands in front of him. "Careful." Another joked. "He might be here to show us how it was done back in the war." Laughter followed, careless, sharp. The parents in the chairs smiled nervously, not wanting to get involved. Thomas shifted slightly, eyes calm. He didn't smile, didn't frown, just quiet stillness. Ryan smirked. "Tell you what, why don't you come out here? Show us a move or two. We could use the entertainment." His friends laughed louder, clapping each other on the back. The air in the room changed, but only slightly. Some of the older parents looked away, embarrassed by the mockery. A few teenagers nudged each other, waiting to see what would happen. Thomas's left hand brushed the edge of his sleeve. There, just beneath the cuff, was a faded scar, long, straight, pale against weathered skin. He adjusted the cuff, covering it again. He spoke at last, voice low, steady. "No need for that. Nothing more." Ryan spread his arms wide. "Come on, sir. Just a little fun. We'll go easy on you." The last words carried a sting. Thomas looked at the mat. Then he looked at Ryan. His eyes lingered just a moment too long. The laughter thinned, though no one could have said why. And then he lowered his gaze again, silent as stone. The students returned to their drills, but their glances kept slipping back toward the old man at the wall. Something in his stillness unsettled them. The moment had passed, or so they thought. Thomas shifted his weight just slightly, one boot heel clicking against the floor. It was a small sound, but it carried sharp in the quiet hall. The black belts glanced at each other, uneasy now. They hadn't expected silence to feel heavier than words, and Thomas remained against the wall, eyes lowered, but not in submission, not in the least. The next drill ended, and the younger black belts gathered near the center of the mat. Their chatter grew louder, deliberate, as though to draw the old man back into their game. Ryan wiped his forehead with his sleeve, grinning at his friends. "He's tough, though. Didn't even flinch." "You sure you're not secretly training somewhere, sir?" His voice dripped with mock respect. Thomas met his eyes for a brief second, then looked away again. His silence carried more weight than the insult. He clasped his hands loosely behind his back, shoulders straight, but unforced. The gym's head instructor, Master Alvarez, was adjusting a child's belt near the edge of the mat. He didn't interfere, though his gaze flicked once toward Thomas, then back to his work. He had seen men like this before. Men who said little but carried something invisible. Seriously, Ryan continued, pacing in front of the crowd. Now, let's put it to the test. 1 round. I'll even promise not to break a hip. His friends roared with laughter. Parents shifted uneasily. One mother, seated in the corner, whispered to her husband, "That's not right." He shook his head quietly, urging her not to get involved. Thomas inhaled slowly, steady as a tide rolling in. He let it out, his expression calm. His eyes traveled across the mat, then down to the floor before him. No one noticed how balanced his stance was, how his weight shifted with quiet precision, how his hands, though still, were always ready. Ryan pressed again. "What do you say, sir?" "Don't tell me you're afraid." He smiled, but the smile looked thinner now. Forced, Thomas finally raised his head. His eyes, pale gray and steady, met Ryan's. The room went quiet for the briefest moment. Then, with the faintest tilt of his chin, Thomas looked away once more. It wasn't surrender, it was something else, and that something unsettled Ryan far more than he admitted. The laughter from the group faltered, though no one said why. They returned half-heartedly to their drills. Yet each time their eyes wandered back toward the man at the wall. He stood with the ease of someone who had been waiting all his life for moments exactly like this. Nothing more was spoken, but the stillness had shifted. Something had begun. The class rolled forward, kicks snapped through the air. Mats thudded beneath takedowns. Yet in every corner of the room, attention drifted back to the silent figure. By the wall. Thomas Hale had not moved, his arms still folded gently behind his back, shoulders neither tense nor slack. He stood as though every inch of his body knew exactly where it belonged. Master Alvarez called for a water break. The students scattered to bottles and benches. Ryan lingered, smirking, throwing glances toward the old man. "Still here?" he said, tone sharp enough for all to hear. Thomas gave a small nod. Nothing more. Ryan frowned. He had expected a reply, maybe a nervous chuckle. Instead, he got silence. One of the younger belts, a tall boy named Marcus, with restless energy, nudged Ryan. "Maybe he can't hear you." He grinned. "Old folks, right?" Their friends laughed again, though quieter now. Thomas's eyes moved once toward the boy, then back to the mat. No anger, no humor, only stillness. Calm as stone, weathered by years of wind. Ryan stepped closer. "You, watching, old man? Taking notes, or just reliving the glory days?" The words hit something, but not on Thomas's face. Deep inside, a flicker stirred. Dust swept from a memory long hidden. The smell of salt water, the whine of rotors overhead, sand-stinging eyes, a voice on a radio calling his name. He blinked once, and the gym returned. Children laughing, students chatting. He pulled his sleeve down again. Beneath the fabric, the scar burned with memory. Master Alvarez called the class back, pairs grappling dot. The room bustled once more. Thomas shifted his weight just slightly. Boots making no sound against the floor, his eyes lingered. On the mats, he studied every movement, every grip, every flaw. To the others it seemed idle watching, but to him it was instinct, assessment, calculation. He could see where balance broke, where strength collapsed, where fear bloomed in hesitation. Ryan threw a glance his way, mid-grapple as though daring him silently. Thomas did not move, but his hand brushed his pocket where a small piece of worn metal lay hidden. A dog tag, edges dulled, numbers faded. It had not left his pocket in 20 years. His fingers touched it now, not for show, but for grounding, a reminder. The laughter swelled again on the mat, but the tone had changed. There was an edge of unease beneath it, and the old man stood calm, immovable, as though waiting. Ryan and Marcus paired together, eager to show off. Their movements were fast, but sloppy beneath the polish. They slammed into the mat with a flourish, earning chuckles from the crowd of younger belts. Thomas watched, his eyes narrowed only, slightly. Every pivot, every shift of weight he tracked. His mind wasn't in the gym. It was in a dusty courtyard, half a world away, where he had once read movements the same way, but with lives on the line. Ryan pinned Marcus, grinning, playing to the room. "See that?" he said loudly, eyes flicking toward Thomas. "Would have snapped a shoulder right there." He laughed as though his own skill were unquestionable. For the first time, Thomas moved from the wall. He stepped forward, quiet, steady. A few parents glanced up. One mother whispered, "Is he going out there?" He stopped short of the mat, boots planted evenly, and spoke softly. "Your elbows open." Ryan frowned. "What?" Thomas's voice was calm, almost absent. "You left your arm unguarded. He could have broken free." Before Ryan could respond, Marcus, grinning mischievously, tried exactly that. A small twist, a quick jerk. Ryan lost balance. In seconds, he was on his back, pinned by the very boy he'd been boasting over. The gym erupted in laughter, but not at Thomas this time. At Ryan. Ryan scrambled up, red-faced, snapping, lucky shot. But his eyes slid back to Thomas, unsettled. It hadn't been luck. Parents whispered now, glancing at the quiet man who had spoken only one sentence. Children tilted their heads, watching him more than the sparring. Master Alvarez's eyes narrowed slightly, but he said nothing. Thomas returned to the wall. He folded his hands again, posture unshaken, the dog tag pressed, lightly in his pocket, warm against his palm. Inside, something long dormant stirred awake. Not pride, not anger, something simpler, precision. The gym was no longer laughing quite the same way. The game had changed, though few yet knew how, and the old man had spoken, just once. But it was enough to shift the room. The laughter that followed Ryan's stumble was quick to rise, but quicker still to fade. Something about the way Thomas had spoken, quiet, almost reluctant, hung in the air. Parents exchanged looks. Some smiled faintly, though they didn't know why. Others seemed uneasy, as though an invisible line had been crossed. Ryan, flushed, returned to the sparring circle with Marcus. He moved harder now, sharper, trying to recover dignity. His strikes carried more force than control. Each thud of body against mat echoed louder than before. But not everyone's eyes were on Ryan anymore. Near the benches, a boy of 14 sat watching, arms folded across his chest. His name was Daniel, a student still new to the school. His mother had brought him here to learn focus, not to fight. Daniel had been quiet all morning, but now his gaze kept drifting toward the older man by the wall. "Mom," he whispered. He saw it before it happened. His mother frowned. "Saw what?" "The move. Ryan's mistake." He said it. Then Marcus flipped him just like that. His mother didn't answer, but her eyes lingered on Thomas for a moment longer than before. On the mat, Ryan grunted, twisting into another throw. Marcus hit hard, breath whooshing from his chest. The other black belts cheered him on, eager to bury the moment of humiliation. But the noise sounded thinner now, forced. Master Alvarez clapped his hands. "Switch partners." His voice was even, though his eyes glanced toward the old man before. flicking away. He had taught long enough to know when something subtle was at work in a room. Thomas shifted slightly against the wall. Not much, just enough to straighten his shoulders. The flannel shirt moved against the outline of lean muscles, still firm beneath the ears. His boots adjusted their angle on the wood floor, balanced, ready. Most saw nothing in it, but Daniel did. His brow furrowed, like a boy sensing a storm before the sky darkened. A father in the corner muttered to his wife, "Why won't the man sit down? If he's just watching, he should sit." But Thomas remained where he was, upright, balanced, silent. Ryan, paired with another student now, glanced over his shoulder more than once. His smirk faltered each time his eyes met the gray, steady gaze of the old man. There was no mockery there, no amusement, only the calm attention of someone who had measured him and already found the limits. And though no words were spoken, unease crept into the gym, like a draft through an open door. The crowd began to notice. The unease grew slowly, like water rising without anyone realizing it. The students kept drilling, pairs tossing and pinning each other, but their glances betrayed them. Eyes flicked toward the old man more often than toward the instructor. Thomas Hale remained by the wall, posture unchanged. To a stranger, he was just waiting. To anyone watching closely, he was measuring, observing with a focus that never wavered. Ryan tried to reclaim the attention. He laughed louder than necessary, slapped his partner on the back after a throw, barked out jokes that sounded brittle, in the open air. His friends followed his lead, their laughter echoing too high, too sharp. But the energy no longer filled the room. It scattered. It kept circling back to the quiet figure who said nothing. One of the parents, a retired police officer named Harold, leaned toward the mother beside him. "See the way he stands? Not casual. That's a stance. I've seen it." The mother nodded faintly, not sure what to say, but her eyes lingered too. Across the room, Daniel's hands clenched into fists on his knees. "He's different," he whispered again. His mother shushed him, but her gaze mirrored his. Master Alvarez, standing at the edge of the mat, adjusted his belt slowly. His expression betrayed nothing, but his eyes betrayed curiosity. He had taught for 30 years. He knew what casual observers looked like. He also knew what watchfulness looked like, and Thomas Hale wasn't merely watching. He was reading. The drills moved to counterattacks. Students threw each other harder now, the mat thumping with bodies. Ryan, aggressive as ever, tried to force a show. He looked toward Thomas after each throw, as though daring him silently. But Thomas never reacted. Not with approval. Not with judgment. Only stillness. His right hand brushed his sleeve again, as though adjusting it. Beneath the fabric, the scar tugged faintly. A reminder, a memory pressed into skin. For the first time, Ryan hesitated mid-move, a fraction of a second, just enough for his partner to slip out and reverse the hold. Ryan slammed down on the mat, with a grunt. The students laughed, but not as before. This time, the laughter carried relief, a breaking of tension none of them could name. Ryan sat up, breathing harder, his face darkening, his eyes locked on the old man, and Thomas finally raised his head. The gym grew quieter, almost without anyone realizing. Something had shifted again, and the silence in the room was no longer casual. It was waiting. The gym bustled, but beneath it ran a hush no one admitted aloud. Each sound seemed sharper now. The squeak of bare feet on the mat, the smack of palms slapping down to break a fall, the distant hum of the heater. Yet none of it could cover the weight of the old man's presence. Thomas Hale shifted his boots slightly, just enough to ease pressure on his knees. His gaze swept across the floor again, calm, deliberate. He was not watching sport. He was cataloging, calculating. Ryan forced another throw, grunting as he slammed his partner down. He looked at Thomas again, jaw tight, eyes narrowed. It wasn't amusement anymore. It was challenge, raw and restless. Parents whispered. He hasn't said a word since that correction, one muttered. And yet it feels like he's in charge of the room. The retired officer, Harold, leaned back in his chair. I've seen men like him, he murmured more to himself than anyone else. Carried themselves that way. You don't learn it here, you learn it somewhere harder. On the wall, Thomas adjusted the cuff of his sleeve again, exposing the faint edge of the scar before tucking it back. His thumb lingered on the fabric a moment longer than necessary. A memory stirred. The desert 20 years past. A convoy at dusk, tires grinding over sand, the radio hissing with static before a sudden sharp voice. Hail on point. He remembered the weight of his rifle, the heat pressing against his neck, the silence before contact. The scar was from that night, a night that ended with men lost and a promise carved into his skin. He blinked, pulling himself back to the gym, to the children, the drills, the laughter that had already thinned. He reached into his pocket, fingers brushing the worn dog tag again. Cold, heavy, grounding. Ryan caught the motion. His smirk returned. Thin, bitter. What's that you keep fiddling with, old man? Nervous tick. He said it loud enough for all to hear. His friends laughed, but their laughter rang hollow. Thomas didn't answer. He didn't even look at Ryan. He simply tucked his hand away again, shoulders square, gaze calm. But Daniel, the boy on the bench, leaned forward. He had seen the glint of metal. He had seen the way Thomas's hand touched it. Not like a nervous habit, but like a ritual, respectful, heavy. And though Daniel didn't yet understand, he knew that tag wasn't decoration. It was history. And the man who carried it was more than he appeared. Ryan's jab about the dog tag drew a few uneasy chuckles, but even his closest friends avoided meeting his eyes. The sound died quickly, swallowed by the heavy quiet that followed. Thomas remained still, his hand brushing the pocket once more, before falling back to his side. His face revealed nothing. Yet his silence seemed louder than any retort could have been. On the bench, young Daniel kept staring. His mother touched his shoulder. Don't stare, Daniel. He's not like them, the boy whispered. He doesn't need to shout. Centered. Ryan chuckled, shaking out his arms. All right, old man, don't worry. I'll go easy. His friends laughed too loud, trying to chase away their unease. Thomas didn't answer. He only placed his feet shoulder-width apart, knees soft, shoulders relaxed. His arms hung loosely at his sides, palms open, fingers steady. Not a stance taught here. Not a stance anyone recognized. Eric muttered from the sidelines. What's he doing? That's not guard. But Harold leaned forward, eyes sharp. He knew he was already set. Ryan lunged forward, testing. A quick feint, a sudden reach for the wrist. But before his fingers could touch skin, Thomas shifted. No force, no struggle, just a precise turn of the body, a slide of the foot. Ryan's hand caught nothing but air. The crowd inhaled as one. Thomas hadn't struck him, hadn't even raised a hand. He simply wasn't where Ryan expected him to be. Ryan froze for half a second, then forced a laugh. Slippery. He reset, trying to mask the sting of failure. Thomas's face remained calm, unreadable. His pale eyes never blinked, never broke contact. Master Alvarez's brow furrowed, his arms folding tighter across his chest. He recognized the movement. Not martial arts for show, not sport. That was something else. Older, colder, a language of survival. Ryan circled again, the grin on his face thinner now. His chest rose and fell faster. He hadn't been touched, hadn't been thrown, but the balance of the room had shifted. The parents sat forward, silent. The students, no longer, whispered. Even the smallest children stilled, sensing something they couldn't name. Thomas adjusted his shoulders once more. The faintest roll, the kind a soldier makes when the weight of a pack digs in. He said nothing, but the room now belonged to him, and the tension had risen to its peak. The gym fell into a strange silence, not complete, but heavy. Even the sound of feet shifting on the mat seemed sharper, louder. Cutting through the air, Ryan tried to keep his swagger. He bounced on the balls of his feet, rolling his shoulders, jaw set in a grin that no longer touched his eyes. His bravado was slipping thread by thread. Thomas Hale stood motionless. No bounce, no wasted energy. His arms still loose at his sides. He looked as if he were waiting. Not fighting, waiting for something inevitable. Ryan lunged again, this time faster, sharper. A sudden jab toward Thomas's chest. Thomas turned a fraction, weight shifting from heel to toe, and Ryan's strike. Cut empty space. The crowd gasped. Thomas had moved so little, yet Ryan's attack seemed to dissolve against him. Not blocked, not parried, simply gone. Master Alvarez's lips pressed tight. He recognized the truth. Precision born from repetition. Thousands of hours. Not in gyms, but in places where mistakes cost lives. Ryan reset, more frustrated now. He barked out a laugh, too loud. Not bad. Not bad for your age. His voice cracked on the last word, betraying nerves. Thomas's expression didn't change. His gaze, calm and level, pressed heavier on Ryan than any. Blow could have on the sidelines. Daniel gripped his mother's arm. Did you see that? He didn't even touch him. His mother hushed him, but she leaned forward too. Eyes wide. Harold muttered, almost reverent. That's training. Real training. You can't fake that. Ryan circled, sweat beading on his brow. He lunged again, feinting high, aiming low. Thomas shifted once more, body tilting with the grace of water slipping past stone. Ryan stumbled, his own force working against him, and only just caught himself before falling. The room grew even quieter. Thomas did not press forward. He did not strike. He only reset his stance, balanced, patient, as though time belonged to him. The silence stretched. Parents stopped breathing. Students froze, mid-fidget. For the first time, Ryan felt the weight of it pressing down. This wasn't just an old man. This was someone who had been here before, in far harsher places, against far greater opponents. And every quiet second that passed made that truth louder. Thomas exhaled softly. The calm before the storm was complete. The gym held its breath. Every eye fixed on the two men in the center. Ryan wiped his palms against his uniform pants, pretending it was sweat. He circled wider this time, trying to draw Thomas into movement, into some kind of mistake. His grin wavered, returning in flashes, then fading again as he caught the steady gaze waiting for him. Thomas did not circle. He pivoted with each step Ryan took. Quiet, efficient, always facing him. He never let the younger man out of his line of sight. His body moved like a compass needle, calm, precise, always pointing north. A bead of sweat rolled down Ryan's temple. He snorted, covering nerves with noise. You going to move, or just stand there like a statue? His tone was sharp, but underneath it lay something tighter. Fear, still buried, but rising. Thomas did not answer. His silence had become its own language. From the benches, parents leaned forward, no longer whispering. The children sat quiet, eyes wide, as though sensing a story they would tell later. Daniel's voice was barely audible, but it carried. He doesn't have to move. He already knows what's coming. Master Alvarez, arms folded, gave no outward sign, but his eyes stayed on Thomas. He saw what the others could not. The weight distribution in the feet, the economy of movement, the absolute absence of waste. He had seen fighters train for decades and never stand like that. Ryan lunged again, throwing a low kick this time, hoping to surprise. Thomas shifted one step back, light, almost casual. The kick meant nothing. Ryan stumbled forward a half step, forced to catch his balance. Thomas's eyes never wavered, his breathing never quickened. And for the first time, Ryan hesitated before, charging back in. The crowd felt it. That hesitation spread across the room like a ripple in still water. Parents exchanged glances. A student muttered, "Why doesn't he just finish it?" Another whispered back, "He doesn't need to." Thomas rolled his shoulders once. The motion was subtle, but it spoke volumes. Not fatigue, not tension. Readiness. The gym had shifted, entirely now. No one laughed, no one mocked. They were no longer watching a joke. They were watching something they did not yet understand. And in that silence, Ryan realized he wasn't fighting an old man. He was standing in front of something far older, far heavier, and he was out of his depth. The silence stretched until it seemed the walls themselves leaned in to listen. Ryan shifted his weight again, searching for an opening that wasn't there. His chest rose and fell faster than it should have this early in a spar. He masked it with bravado, but every breath betrayed the pressure mounting inside him. Thomas Hale remained still. His arms were loose, but his stance had changed. Barely, yet unmistakably. One foot angled, heel light, shoulders softened. It wasn't a karate stance. It wasn't judo. It wasn't anything the gym had drilled into these boys. It was something else. Something older, sharper. Master Alvarez's brows drew tight. He knew that stance. Not exactly, but close enough to sense the origin. Military, not civilian. Ryan lunged again, trying a feint into a sweeping strike. His movement was fast, rehearsed. Yet Thomas shifted a fraction, a pivot so quiet it looked accidental, until Ryan hit the mat, sprawled face first, with nothing but his own momentum to blame. The sound rang out sharp against the quiet room. Gasps rose. Children clutched at their knees. Parents straightened, stunned. Ryan scrambled up quickly, red-faced, brushing at his GI as if he could wipe away the moment. Lucky. Stumble. Too low for conviction. But the room had seen. That was the fourth stumble. None of them luck. Harold whispered, his voice shaking with a strange mix of awe and memory. That man's been trained. Not like these boys. Not like us. Like the kind who don't come back the same. The students glanced toward him, unease in their eyes. Ryan turned back, fists clenched, his laughter now gone. He stared at Thomas as if looking for a weakness, any weakness. Thomas's expression gave him none. Instead, Thomas's eyes softened, almost in pity. He spoke at last. "Stop fighting your own weight. That's what's beating you." The word struck harder than a blow. A simple correction, but one that only came from years of hard-won truth. Ryan's face tightened. He knew, deep inside, that it was right. The crowd grew heavier in their silence. They weren't waiting for strikes anymore. They were waiting for revelation.